Hadley Zimmer's stomach dropped the second she opened her laptop and saw the blinking cursor on a blank email. Her deadline was yesterday. No, 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 she whispered, yanking her ponytail tighter as if that would rewind time. I was supposed to send the quarterly report by 5. She checked the clock. 9:30. Morning. She was officially screwed. After 2 years of surviving the Shark Tank that was Weston and Gold PR agency, she had never missed a deadline. Not once. And now, on the first day under a new boss, the mysterious new owner who'd bought out the firm 2 weeks ago and was finally stepping in today, she'd blown it. The report was still sitting in pieces in a folder labeled "Almost There." Her phone rang. Not hers, exactly the office line. She flinched. Then she answered. Hadley Zimmer, team lead of conference room, now. The voice was deep, calm, and completely unfamiliar. Male. She froze. Who this is your new boss. I assume you know who that is. He hung up. Hadley stared at the receiver like it had slapped her. Her palms were sweating. She grabbed her laptop, shoved it into her bag, and bolted out of her cubicle, ignoring curious glances from coworkers. The conference room door was already open. Inside stood a man in a navy suit that looked like it cost more than her rent. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and short black hair. He didn't look much older than 30, but there was something serious about him, like he'd lived 10 lives before breakfast. Hadley Zimmer? He asked, his hands in his pockets. She stopped in the doorway. Yes. You missed your deadline, he said plainly, watching her like a hawk. She swallowed. I know, I take full responsibility. It's not an excuse, but my sister went into early labor last night and I was at the hospital all night. I was going to finish the report once she was stable, but I don't care about excuses, he said. Her heart sank. But then he added, I care about whether you're a problem or a solution. She blinked. Excuse me, he stepped closer. You're the only team lead who hasn't had a single client drop in a year. You're the one who handled the Shepherd account last minute and saved the firm from a lawsuit. I've read every report. I know what you're capable of. So if you say you missed this deadline for a real reason, I believe you. But you need to fix it, today. She stared at him. You're not firing me, he raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't be very smart to fire the most competent person here, would it? She exhaled. I'm Yaron Price, he said, offering a hand. She shook it, stunned. You're the new owner, technically the new CEO. I bought Weston and Gold 2 weeks ago. And you already know all the team leads, she asked, surprised. I know everything about this firm. I don't spend millions on something without doing my homework. She blinked. Millions? He gave a short nod, then looked at her laptop bag. Report, I need it by 2. Yes, sir. As she turned to leave, he said, Don't call me sir, just Yaron. She paused. Okay, Yaron. His gaze followed her out. By 1:55 p.m., Hadley had the report polished, formatted, and printed. She walked it to Yaron's office, her pulse pounding. It was strange he hadn't scared her exactly, but something about him made her feel like she was being studied, like he was trying to figure her out. His office was on the top floor, all glass and steel and sunlight. He was sitting behind a desk, typing. She knocked. He looked up. You're early. I finished it, she said, walking in. Here. He took the report and flipped through it. Clean data, clear insights, strong recommendations, good work. Thanks. He looked up. You look exhausted, she blinked. I didn't sleep. Hospital all night, right? She nodded. He stood and walked to a small cabinet behind his desk. He pulled out a sleek black box and handed it to her. What's this? She asked, confused. Energy, he said. Open it. Inside was a chocolate croissant from Le Monde, the impossible to get into French bakery downtown. Her jaw dropped. These sell out by 7 a.m. I had someone pick it up at 6. For me, he shrugged like it was nothing. You need fuel. And you're not allowed to collapse on the job. She stared at him. That's really thoughtful. He leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. You're a good worker, Hadley, but you're carrying too much weight. You're always fixing things for everyone else. When's the last time someone took care of you? She blinked, caught off guard. I'm not. You don't have to answer. Just eat the croissant. She smiled a little, then sat down in the guest chair and took a bite. It was warm, buttery, perfect. I've never had one of these, she said. I always thought they were overrated. And now, I want 10 more, he smiled. Maybe I'll send a dozen to your desk tomorrow, she laughed. Is this how you win over your employees? Feed them. No, he said, watching her. Just you. Her smile faded slightly, heart stumbling. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Over the next week, everything changed. Yaron started showing up near her desk with questions that didn't need asking. He brought her coffee. He invited her to sit in on high-level strategy meetings. When she stayed late one night, she found a note on her desk. Go home, you've done enough. He didn't flirt. He didn't cross lines, but there was something there. Something quiet and powerful. The way he looked at her lingered too long. The way he listened when she spoke like her voice mattered. On Friday, he found her in the break room. Dinner, he said simply. She blinked. What? I want to take you to dinner. Like a work dinner, his eyes held hers. No, she hesitated. Isn't that complicated? I don't care about complicated, he said. I care about you. She couldn't breathe for a second. I know I'm your boss, he added. But I'm also a man who's been trying not to fall for you since the first meeting. Clearly, I failed. She stared at him, heart pounding. I know it's fast, he said. But I don't do anything halfway. She stepped closer, just enough to feel his warmth. Okay, she whispered. Dinner. Tonight, she nodded. He smiled. I'll pick you up at 7. As he walked out, she leaned against the counter, dazed. She missed a deadline. And somehow, she might have just met the man who was about to change everything. Hadley stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, clutching a pair of heels she hadn't worn since her college roommate's wedding. She hadn't exactly planned for her boss, her intimidating, unreadable, maddeningly magnetic boss, to ask her out. Not like that. Not with that kind of certainty. Not when she had barely recovered from the week-long adrenaline high of trying to impress him. She'd settled on a black wrap dress that didn't scream trying too hard, just whispered, I know who I am. She hoped it was whispering the right thing anyway. At exactly 7, her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Yaron standing there, holding a single white orchid. I didn't know what kind of flowers you liked, he said, handing it to her. But this one reminded me of you. She took it, caught off guard. Because it's delicate, he tilted his head. Because it survives in places most things wouldn't. She felt her breath catch. He was wearing a tailored charcoal coat over a dark button-down, the collar open just enough to look effortless. The kind of effortless that took hours and money. But he didn't feel showy. He felt composed, like everything around him bent to his presence. She grabbed her coat and followed him to the elevator, where a sleek black car waited at the curb. That yours? She asked when they stepped outside. No, yours tonight, he said, holding the door open. I wanted you to be comfortable. Inside, the car smelled faintly of cedar and clean leather. She glanced at him as they pulled into traffic. You don't seem like someone who does this often. Pick up women from work, pick up anyone, she said. You're too direct, most people aren't. I don't like wasting time, he said. And I don't like pretending I'm not interested when I am. She looked out the window, trying to calm the flutter in her chest. I guess I'm still trying to figure you out. You don't have to, he said. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Anything? Try me. She studied him for a moment. Why PR? You could have bought a tech firm, real estate, something bigger. I wanted something messy, he said. Something human. Something that needed fixing. And you think Weston and Gold needed fixing? I think it had potential, he said. But it was being run like a machine. No one was asking why. I like asking why. She could see it now, the way he watched meetings, not for answers, but for intent. He didn't just want results. He wanted to know what made people tick. They pulled up to a restaurant she'd never seen before. No sign out front. Just frosted glass and a man in a black suit waiting at the door. This place doesn't even have a name, she whispered as they stepped inside. It doesn't need one, Yaron said. The chef doesn't believe in advertising. If you're meant to find it, you do. The host greeted Yaron with a quiet nod and led them through a narrow hallway to a private room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. A single table, already set, waited for them. She was silent as she sat down, letting the candlelight flicker between them. You're not used to being taken out like this, Yaron said, not as a question. No, she admitted. Most guys I've dated think fancy means splitting and Uber. What kind of men were you dating? Ones who didn't know what they wanted, she said. Or maybe they did, and it wasn't me, he leaned forward. Then they were idiots, she looked at him, really looked. You keep saying things like that. Things like what? Things that sound like you've already made your mind up about me. I have, she swallowed. That's dangerous. Maybe, he said, but I'm not here to play it safe. The waiter appeared and poured wine wordlessly, then disappeared again. She sipped hers, then looked at him over the rim. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he narrowed his eyes slightly. Why? Because you said you'd tell me anything. And because I want to know who I'm really having dinner with. He was quiet for a moment, then said, My mother worked 3 jobs. Nights, weekends, she never asked for anything. When I bought my first company, the first thing I did was pay off her mortgage. Hadley blinked. She hadn't expected that. What happened to her? She passed. Years ago, I'm sorry. She was the reason I started working when I was 14, he said. I used to fix computers at a strip mall on weekends, saved every dime. She rested her elbow on the table. You're not what I thought. What did you think? That you were the kind of man who was born with a private driver and a fountain pen. He let out a low laugh. I earned every piece of this, she nodded. I can tell, he tilted his head. Your turn. What? Tell me something no one knows, she hesitated. I haven't taken a vacation in 6 years. Why? Because I'm terrified if I stop moving, everything will fall apart. He looked at her, gaze steady. Then someone should make sure it doesn't. She didn't blink. You're trying to be that someone I want to be. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. After dinner, he walked her back to the car, his hand brushing hers just once. Not accidental, not possessive, just enough to ask a question without saying it. When they reached her door, he didn't lean in. He didn't assume. Can I see you again? He asked. She nodded. You already did. He smiled, but it wasn't the kind that demanded anything. It was quiet, certain, then he turned to leave. Hadley watched him go, unsure if her world had tilted or if it had finally aligned. The Monday after their dinner, Hadley stepped into the office and immediately sensed a shift, not in the air around her, but in herself. Her walk was more grounded, her shoulders were back. Something had changed, and it wasn't just that a man had taken her to a secret restaurant or looked at her like she mattered more than the skyline, it was that he'd listened. And now she couldn't unfeel it. Yaron didn't hover. He didn't text over the weekend. He didn't drop by her desk with pastries or glances. He'd given her space, and somehow that only made his presence more potent. She found herself leaning into her work with sharper focus, her instincts keener, her voice firmer in meetings. Every time she opened her mouth, she could feel his attention even when he wasn't in the room. Late Tuesday afternoon, she was summoned to the top floor again. But this time, it wasn't just her. The executive boardroom was already half full when she arrived. She took a seat near the end, scanning the faces of department heads and senior partners, all of them at least a decade older than her. Yaron entered a moment later, his phone in one hand, a folded folder in the other. The room quieted immediately. Thank you all for coming, he said, setting the folder on the table. I've spent the past few weeks reviewing operations and I've made a decision. He paused, then looked directly at Hadley. I'm creating a new role, Director of Strategic Media. It will oversee high-profile client campaigns, crisis strategy, and our global expansion initiative. I want someone who understands not only our clients' needs, but the heart of this firm. There was a ripple of murmurs. Hadley's fingers curled around the edge of her chair. I'm offering the position to Hadley Zimmer. Silence, she stared at him, stunned. The formal offer will be in your inbox by end of day, he continued, eyes still on her. Effective next Monday. Someone coughed. Another person shifted, but no one objected, not aloud. After the meeting, she followed him out into the hallway. Yaron, she said, her voice low. He turned, his expression unreadable. You didn't tell me you were going to do that. I didn't need to, he replied. You earned it. She stepped closer. You're escalating this. He studied her. Is that a problem? I don't know, she whispered. I need to be sure this isn't about us. It's not, he said firmly. This job existed in my plans before I ever met you. You just happen to be the only person qualified to fill it. And the fact that we've been on a date, his gaze flickered but his voice stayed steady, has nothing to do with your promotion, but it has everything to do with why I'm trying not to touch you right now. She felt her pulse jump. I want to be clear, he added. I'm not putting you in this position to win you. I'm putting you there because you belong there, but I won't pretend this isn't personal for me anymore, not where you're concerned. She searched his face. What happens if it doesn't work? Then we both walk away with our integrity intact, but I'm not planning on failure in either category. That night she lay awake replaying his words. She wasn't naive. She knew how quickly everything could implode, but something in her trusted him. Not because he was charming or powerful or decisive, but because he had never once tried to convince her. He just showed up and let her decide. By Friday, she'd cleared out her old desk and moved into the new office adjacent to his. It had no window, no plants, no personal touches. Just a sleek desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of shelves that begged to be filled. Yaron passed by as she was unpacking. You need anything? He asked, pausing in the doorway. I'm good. He stepped inside, glancing around. Feels sterile. It is. I haven't had time to make it mine. Then let me help. He disappeared and returned 5 minutes later with a large rectangular box. Inside was a framed photo and aerial view of a city skyline lit up at night, but it wasn't New York. It was Seattle, her hometown. Her mother's favorite place in the world. She blinked at it. You mentioned once that you hadn't been home in years, he said. I figured you could use a reminder. She ran a finger along the edge of the frame. You remembered that. I remember everything you say, he said simply. She set it on the shelf behind her desk, then turned to face him. You're making it very hard not to fall for you. Then don't, he said. Just fall. That night, she found herself walking with him through the city after a client gala. She wore a navy sheath dress she never thought she'd have reason to own, and he wore a tux that looked like it had been designed for his frame alone. They stopped at her rooftop garden above one of his hotels. This place is closed, she said as he opened a side gate with a key card. Not to me. The view was breathtaking. String lights wound through the trellises and a soft breeze moved through the ivy-covered walls. Why are we here? She asked, stepping into the open courtyard. Because I needed a place that matched the way I feel when I'm with you, he said. She turned, startled by the softness in his voice. I've done a lot of things in my life, he continued. Built companies, made deals, watched people come and go, but none of it ever felt like this. She tried to speak, but the lump in her throat wouldn't let her. I don't care how complicated this is, he said. I don't care about the rules or the optics. You're the first thing in a long time that doesn't feel like a transaction. She stepped toward him, heart shaking. And if you told me to walk away right now, I would, he finished. But I'm hoping you won't. She reached for his collar, fingers curling into the fabric. I won't, she whispered. Then she kissed him, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. The first real storm of the season hit New York on a Thursday. Rain pelted the windows of the 22nd floor like it was trying to get in, and Hadley stared out at the gray haze beyond the glass, her mind far from the numbers on her screen. Her new office was quiet, her inbox full, but her thoughts were with Yaron. They hadn't spoken since the kiss. Not because something had gone wrong, if anything, it had gone too right. That rooftop moment had shifted something between them, something that made the ground feel less stable under her feet. And now, they were both pretending nothing had changed, moving through the office like two professionals who hadn't just collided in a way that made everything else feel irrelevant. She looked up when someone tapped on her doorframe. Got 5 minutes? Yaron asked, already stepping inside. She stood, brushing non-existent wrinkles from her skirt. Of course. He didn't sit. Instead, he handed her a sealed envelope. What's this? She asked, taking it. An invitation, he said. For this weekend. She opened it and blinked. This is for the Westhaven Foundation Ball. It's the biggest charity gala of the year, he said. I'm on the board, I know, but it's usually all CEOs and donors. Why me? I want you there, he said. Not as my employee, as my guest. She hesitated, fingers tightening on the envelope. People will talk. Let them, he said. I'm tired of pretending there's not more between us. She walked around her desk, voice low. Are you sure? Because once it's out, it's out. No taking it back. I know exactly what I'm doing, Hadley. The question is, do you? She met his gaze. Yes. That night, she pulled a dress from the back of her closet she'd never had the courage or the occasion to wear. It was deep sapphire, fitted through the bodice with a sweep of fabric that moved like water. She'd bought it on a whim years ago, telling herself it was for someday. Someday had arrived. When Yaron arrived to pick her up, he didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable in a way that made her stomach twist. Do I look ridiculous? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. He shook his head, voice low. You look like every decision I've ever made led me to this moment. The ball was held in a domed hall of glass and gold, the kind of place where chandeliers hung like constellations and a string quartet played music no one really listened to. But the second they walked in together, the atmosphere shifted. Heads turned. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Hadley kept her chin high, her fingers loosely laced with his. She could feel the whispers chasing them across the room like shadows. Who is she? Is that the new director? Are they together? Yaron didn't flinch. He guided her through the crowd with the ease of someone who belonged to this world but didn't care about its rules. When they reached their table, he pulled out her chair himself, then sat beside her instead of across, close enough that their arms brushed. Between courses and speeches, she leaned in. You're not hiding. Should I be? No, she said. It's just surreal. He studied her. You feel out of place. I feel like I'm in someone else's life. He reached for her hand under the table. You're not. You just never had the room to live this one before. Later, as the band shifted to something slower, he stood and offered his hand. Dance with me, she hesitated. I haven't danced in years. Then you're overdue. He didn't wait for more excuses. He led her to the floor, one hand at her back, the other holding hers with quiet confidence. The music wrapped around them like silk. She moved stiffly at first, but he didn't rush her. He guided, steadied, waited. When she finally relaxed into him, it felt like something clicked into place. I never thought I'd be here, she whispered. Where, in a ballroom, in your arms, being seen. You were always worth seeing, he said. The rest of the world just caught up. They didn't speak again until the song ended. He didn't let go of her hand as they returned to the table. And when the night finally wound down, when the lights dimmed and the auctioneer thanked the crowd, he didn't ask if she wanted to go somewhere else. He didn't suggest a nightcap or a hotel or anything that would break the spell too soon. He just looked at her and said, "Come home with me." She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't need to. His penthouse was quiet, high above the city, the storm long gone by the time they stepped inside. Instead of turning on the lights, he walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and opened the blinds. The city glowed below, silent, sprawling, alive. I can't believe this is your view, she said, moving beside him. I can't believe you're in it, he replied. She looked at him, emotion rising in her throat. You really weren't planning on this, were you? No, he said. But now I can't imagine anything else. He reached into a drawer and pulled something out. It was small, velvet, square, her breath caught. What is that? He opened it slowly, revealing a key. It's not a ring, not yet, he said. But it's a start, a way of saying I want you in my life, not just on weekends or workdays, every day. She stared at the key, then back at him. I've never lived with anyone, she said. Not since college. I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow, he said. I'm asking you to believe that this us isn't a phase. She took the key from his hand, her fingers trembling slightly. I believe you, she whispered. He pulled her to him and kissed her, not like the first time, not hesitant or searching. This kiss was certainty. This kiss was home. Weeks passed. The firm adjusted. No scandal erupted. Some raised eyebrows, sure, but most saw what was obvious. She was brilliant and he was proud to stand beside her. And when her sister called one morning in tears because the baby had a fever and she couldn't afford the new pediatrician, Hadley didn't hesitate. She booked the appointment, paid the bill. And when her sister asked how, she just said, "Because someone made sure I could." Months later, she stood beside Yaron at another event, this time not as his guest, but as a speaker, presenting a new initiative they'd built together, one focused on helping underrepresented voices in media find platforms and power. And just before she stepped onto the stage, he leaned in and whispered, "Still think you don't belong in this life?" She turned, smiled, and said, "I think I was always meant for it. I just had to be late once to find it." Then she walked out into the spotlight, knowing exactly who she was. And who was waiting for her when the lights went down. Hadley stepped into the glass-walled conference room, her new heels clicking against the polished wood with quiet confidence. The applause was already fading as she took her seat at the head of the table, her team gathered with laptops open and eyes forward. The initiative she and Yaron had launched was nearing its first major milestone, and today they were reviewing its national rollout. But something deeper stirred beneath the surface of her focus, an unspoken awareness that her life, once dictated by deadlines and survival, now carried a rhythm she hadn't known she needed. She was no longer just reacting. She was creating. When the meeting ended, she gathered her notes and turned toward the adjoining office. Yaron stood by the window, sleeves rolled to his forearms, eyes distant as he looked out at the city. He didn't turn when she entered. "Everything's on track," she said, setting the file down on his desk. He slowly faced her. "You've been quiet all morning. I've been thinking about—" She walked to the edge of his desk and leaned against it. "What happens when everything's going right?" He tilted his head. "You're waiting for the catch." "No," she said. "I'm just wondering what we do when we're not fighting fires anymore." He crossed the space between them and rested his hands on either side of her hips. "We build something that doesn't burn." She searched his face, not for reassurance, he never offered that, but for truth. It was always there. Her phone buzzed on the desk behind her. She let it ring. "I was offered a keynote spot," she said, "at the International PR Summit in Geneva." His expression didn't flicker. "You should take it. It's in 3 months. I'll come with you. You do that." "I'd follow you anywhere," he said. "But only if you want me to." "I do." That night, she returned to their apartment now, with a bottle of wine and a nervous flutter she couldn't quite explain. Yaron was already in the kitchen, sleeves pushed up as he folded herbs into a bowl on the counter. "You cook?" she asked, setting the wine down. He didn't look up. "Only on nights I feel like proving a point." "And what point are you proving tonight?" He met her eyes. "That I want to do the small things, not just the grand gestures." She walked toward him, her voice soft. "You already have." "I've shown you what I can give," he said, "but I haven't asked what you want next." She paused. "You really want to know?" "Yes. I want a life that feels like mine. One I don't have to shrink to fit into, and I want to build it with someone who doesn't ask me to let go of who I am." He reached into his pocket and held something out. It was a ring, simple, elegant, timeless. "I had this made 3 weeks ago," he said. "Not because I wanted to rush you, but because I knew. And I wanted to be ready for when you did, too." Her breath caught. "I don't need fireworks or a stage," he said. "Just you on a Tuesday night in our kitchen." She didn't speak. She couldn't. Instead, she took the ring from his hand and slid it onto her finger. "Yes," she whispered. A month later, they stood on a balcony in Positano, the Mediterranean glowing gold behind them. There was no crowd, no photographer, no orchestrated moment. Just handwritten vows and the quiet sound of waves against the cliffs. After the ceremony, they walked through the narrow streets of the town hand in hand, stopping at a bakery where the owner insisted on giving them lemon pastries and espresso as a wedding gift. They shared them on the beach, shoes in hand, her dress catching the breeze like a whisper. "I never asked," Hadley said, resting her head on his shoulder. "What made you buy Weston and gold in the first place?" He laughed. You won't believe me. Try me. I saw your name on a list of rising leads. I read one memo, just one, but there was something in your voice, something sharp and sincere, and I thought, whoever she is, I want to work with her. She pulled back to look at him. You bought an entire firm because of a memo. I bought the firm because I wanted to meet the woman who wrote it. The rest followed. She kissed him, slow and certain. Back in New York, their marriage didn't change the rhythm, they'd found it deepened it. She still led her team with fire and clarity. He still made decisions with precision and instinct. But now, there was a softness at the edges of their days. Coffee shared before sunrise, notes tucked into briefcases, silent glances across boardrooms that said more than words ever could. 1 year later, Hadley stood in front of a room full of young women at the summit in Geneva. She wore a simple navy dress and a small gold chain around her neck. Her speech was about leadership, identity, and the quiet power of knowing your worth before someone else confirms it. When she stepped down from the stage, Yaron was waiting near the back, hands in his pockets, eyes only on her. You were brilliant, he said. I was honest. Even better. They walked out into the Swiss sunlight together, their shadows stretching side by side across the cobblestone. That night, as they packed for home, Hadley sat on the edge of the bed and opened the small journal she'd carried for years. She turned to the first page, one she'd written in the middle of a sleepless night back when surviving felt like the only goal. Someday, I'll stop running. Someday I'll have space to breathe. Someday I'll be loved without having to earn it. She closed the book, set it on the nightstand, and turned to Yaron. Someday showed up, she said. He kissed her temple. And it's never leaving. Together, they fell asleep in a city not their own, wrapped in the kind of peace that doesn't ask questions. And in the morning, they flew home to the life they'd built, equal, unshaken, and entirely theirs.